Okay. All right. We are up and ready. Okay. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to week 21 of our APL Readers Corner. I have Justine here with me today, and we are going to be doing true crime this week. So for those of you who haven't tuned in before, APL Readers Corner, it's a book discussion review. We choose books based on their availability on Hoopla and kind of our own staff preference as we read them. We review a book from a different genre each week. And those of you watching, you can join in with comments or questions, or maybe express your own likes or dislikes from this book. The book we picked this week was Alice and Freda Forever, A Murder in Memphis by Alexis Coe. And it was a true crime. And we were both very excited to do this.
Absolutely. So just to give you guys a little definition of what true crime is, even though it's kind of self-explanatory in the name. True crime is nonfiction literary and film genre in which the author examines an actual crime and details the actions of real people. The genre has been described as infotainment and as factional, which is a mix of fact and fiction. So some of the common themes and characteristics that you typically get with true crime is that it's usually murder. That's what people are the most interested in. Tales of serial killers dominate the genre, which is about 40%, even though murder only makes up less than 20% of reported crime. But it is present in most true crime stories, just as this one is. True crime works have also focused on other subjects like policemen memoirs and more recently reality police TV shows. Depending on the writer, true crime can stick strictly to well-established facts in a journalistic fashion, or it can be highly speculative, and they typically report on a crime from the beginning of its investigation to its legal proceedings.
I can definitely, that is definitely how this book went out.
Yeah,
You can
pretty
agree.
much it matches all of those.
Yeah, exactly. So the book Alice and Freda Forever was originally published in October of 2014. The mini summary is, in 1892, America was obsessed with a teenage murderess, but it wasn't her crime that shocked the nation. It was her motivation. 19-year-old Alice Mitchell had planned to pass as a man in order to marry her 17-year-old fiancé, Freda Ward, but when their love letters were discovered, they were forbidden from speaking again. Freda adjusted to this fate with an ease that stunned a heartbroken Alice. Her desperation grew with each unanswered letter, and her father's razor soon went missing. On January 25th, Alice publicly slashed her ex-fiancé's throat. Her same-sex love was deemed insane by her father that very night, and even medical experts agreed. After a jury of the finest men in Memphis declared Alice insane, she was remanded to an asylum where she died under mysterious circumstances just a few years later. So this book recounts this tragic real-life love story with over 100 illustrated love letters, maps, artifacts, historical documents, newspaper articles, courtroom proceedings, and intimate domestic scenes. Some of those images were actually really cool.
They really were.
So Alexis Coe, this woman has done a lot. She is an award-winning historian and New York Times bestselling author of You Never Forget Your First and Alice and Freda Forever, which will soon become a major motion picture. She appeared in and was a consulting producer on the History Channel's Washington, executive produced by Doris Kearns Goodwin. She was the host of No Man's Land, the Wings podcast on women's history, and even co-hosted Presidents Are People Too from Audible. She has contributed to The New Yorker, New York Times, The Atlantic, The Slate, The Paris Review Daily, The Guardian, and so many more. Her work has appeared in various editions of Best American Essays, and she even holds a graduate degree in American history and was a research curator at the New York Public Library. That woman's been around.
Yeah, she knows her stuff, if anyone does.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So the reviews overall for this book was actually pretty good. Amazon gave it a 3.8 out of 5. Goodreads, there was a 3.27 out of 5, but Hoopla had a 4.5 out of 5. So overall, it seemed like people kind of really took to this book.
Definitely. So I guess we can start getting right into it. So what would you personally rate the book?
Oh man, I would definitely get it up there. It was probably a high 4 out of 5 for me. I'm sorry, it's got to be like super amazing for it to be a five
Oh
out of
no,
five.
absolutely. I feel the same way. I was a little surprised when I saw that some of them were rating it in the threes, because I definitely would have rated it like a high 4 as well.
I
Um,
mean, I think it was probably the point where we got to the actual criminal proceedings. I kind of lost a little interest, but in the
yeah,
beginning, when they outlined the love story and the crime, I was like, this is
yeah, absolutely. Like, I really liked how it wasn't written just like a report that you would find on a news website. It was very novel-like, easy to get into. Like, I don't know about you, I read it in one sitting because I was like, I gotta see how this ends. It was very thought-provoking, so I really liked it personally.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Do you think it fit our genre theme that we were talking about? How it's, it starts from, the history and then the proceedings and then, the ultimate results of the trial. And then obviously murder.
About murder. Yeah, I think just all of those little tick marks that we were talking about, it matches all of them perfectly to a T.
I can definitely agree. All right. So let's get into some of these questions. I mean, I'm dying to talk about some of these. Obviously, if you have read the book with us, Alice and Freda were in love, planning to get married. Their love was discovered, so they were told to stop seeing each other, where Freda was like, all right, you're right, I'm done. Alice was like, how dare you? And ultimately, Alice murdered her fiance because she didn't want anyone else to have her.
hmm
So, with that notion, what honestly do you think possessed Alice to murder her beloved in cold blood?
So I think I feel bad for both of them, honestly. Obviously, Freda more so because she was like mercilessly killed by the woman who loved her. I think Alice was just intensely obsessed with her and didn't really know how to handle the rejection, because it seemed like Freda kind of had like two other men on the back burner that she could like go be with in like a socially acceptable relationship, but Alice was like, I don't have anybody else. She wasn't going to be tossed aside. She was very vindictive. And maybe due to the time, she just didn't think she'd be able to find anyone else that would love her the same way. So she decided if she couldn't have her, then nobody could.
Ooh. Do you think they each looked at this relationship differently? Do you think maybe like Freda saw this as like her first love infatuation phase, where like Alice saw this as like forever? You know how some teenagers, I mean we all did. We had that forever love we thought was going to last forever and it didn't. But do you think that was just the way they came about these relationships? Do you think that's probably why she reacted so insanely?
I would say so, absolutely. I think they had totally differing ideas about what this relationship was going to look like long term. And Freda was just kind of like living in the moment, but wasn't really that upset when it ended. But for Alice, it was like her whole world crashed down when their relationship ended.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's exactly how I think Alice took it. Because it kind of bothers me about Freda, which is actually we can get into this next question is, what did you think of Freda's character and how she reacted to the relationship compared to Alice? And like you said, Freda was okay with it, even though she told her she was willing to marry her. But
Right.
then when it came out where it's okay, like you can't speak with her, it's like, oh, okay, you're right, just kind of stopped. And
That's
I,
fine.
I would have loved to, of course, obviously we couldn't interview Freda, duh. But I would have loved to been in her mind and understand how deep her love was for Alice versus how deep Alice's love for Freda.
Right.
What
And
do
like
you, What do you think?
We can look, like, really the only evidence we have of her love is through the love letters themselves, right? But
Yes.
obviously we didn't get to hear her side because she in fact is the one, the reason that Alice was in the courtroom, because she murdered her. So we really don't know, like, what was going on in her mind, and we can't really look to her sister or her family, because I don't even think they really understood Alice and Freda's relationship. So it's like, where do we go to look and see what Freda was really thinking? And all we have is the letters. But how honest was she being in those letters? We don't know, right?
Well, and because she was also saying similar things to one of the other men she was involved with.
Hmm.
So it was like, I wonder if she was one of those who feels like, she can give herself to more than one person,
Hmm.
versus Alice, where she's like, no, this is my one and done. And, that happens a lot in relationships.
It
A
does.
lot of people feel like, they don't just love one person, they can love multiple people, where other people are like, no, it's one and done.
Hmm.
And it seems like that's maybe where those two kind of disagreed on things.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe a conversation you guys have before you get engaged. It seems like they didn't really talk about that. Alice just assumed, if we're getting married, you're just married to me. And Freda was like, I'm gonna still write to these guys over here, though.
Well, yeah, it seemed like she thought it was a marriage, but because it was maybe a marriage between two women, that it didn't hold to a higher esteem than a marriage to a man and a woman. I mean, obviously, this is in the 1890s. I
Hmm.
mean, we have read in here that same sex was unheard of. Their minds were boggled at this point. The men were just, they focus so much on that because they're like, how would she have known about this? No one is into this. And then, you talk about French novels and everything, where that, even in France, though, in Europe, that's coming about. Same sex love and same sex relationships are prevalent there. But in here, in Memphis, Tennessee, of all places, that's not happening.
Yeah, they
That
didn't even
doesn't,
have a word for it. They were like, I don't understand what I'm looking at here.
yeah,
What is going on?
or then they called, if for some of you who have read the book, chumming. Now, chumming is an interesting definition. The idea is that in between female friendships, it's okay to show a little extra affection, almost love, appreciation for your friend. But a lot of people were confused because it seemed like Alice and Freda took the chumming to a deeper level. So no one was under, they're like, oh, yeah, you two can be very friendly right now, but soon you're going to have a man. And then you're going to understand. And it's like, what?
Yeah. Like, I had never heard that term before I read this book, and it almost seemed it was like, well, this is like for you to prepare for what it's going to be like when you're married to a man. It's
Yes.
it's just rehearsal, it's just playing, pretending, but then for Alice and Freda, they were not pretending.
And it makes you wonder if, obviously these weren't the only ones that went beyond chumming. I mean, technically, Freda's sister Jo and their friend Lily were also seen chumming
Hmm.
as close too, but I wonder, they felt it was still, maybe they were confused with their feelings, where Alice and Freda knew outright what they were feeling.
Right.
So you saw two different same-sex relationships, but they both came about it in a different way.
Absolutely.
Um, so obviously we know how this trial ends, but how do you think this trial would have been different in modern day, where same-sex relationships, same-sex love is real? It's a thing, and it's definitely a thing versus 1892. It's unheard of.
Right. I think today, Alice definitely would not have been remanded to an asylum at the end of the trial. I don't think they would have been able to, because that's like the whole crux of the court proceedings, is they're deciding, is she crazy or is she competent to stand trial and face the consequences of her actions? And obviously, because of the nature of the trial back in these times, they were like, yeah, obviously she's crazy because women can't be together. Like, she obviously didn't know what she was doing. But today, you know, we would just recognize that as like a legitimate relationship, and I'm sure she would just go to regular jail just like anybody else.
And it would probably also depend on the state's, what is it, first degree murder. I mean, it was first degree murder. That's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
what it was. What their penalty is, if maybe they had the death penalty, or if they had something else. But yeah, I think in modern day, I feel like the trial, they would have focused less on her being clinically insane and more on what caused this? What caused her to murder her beloved, her
Right.
ex-fiance, that kind of thing. And I'm glad you mentioned the this part, because it goes into our next question. So I love this quote from the book. I had to put it in there. It's, "A man who committed a similar crime of passion on the spur of the moment is an ebullition that might occur in every normal man. However, because this was a woman who committed the same act towards a same sex, she's insane." Why would they believe that? Why is it, well, it was a man, so he was crime of passion. Woman, oh no, she crazy.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's quite baffling. What I found so funny when I was thinking about that question is like the ways that they tried to say that Alice was displaying masculinity. So like they were asking the neighbors, the neighbor was like, yeah, like it was so weird. She was like riding horses bareback, like really fast. And like women don't do that. That's just weird. And like she really liked shooting like guns. And like at one point she even tries to purchase a firearm.
Yeah.
And they thought that that was really weird. So I think, you know, they were just trying to make the case that like maybe they thought Alice wanted to be a man, or thought that she was, and that was like why she, you know, thought that she could be in love with a woman. But you know, they were really reaching with some of that, I think, even for the time. Like, why is it bad to ride a horse bareback? I don't understand.
Well, and that's I think the problem with this is that we're viewing this trial and this event from now, now society and now norm. When in 1892, there were expectations for a woman. There's still expectations now for us women, but they're a little different. They're a little lax. There's a little, instead of telling us what we can and cannot do, we have a little more say in that. So that, yeah, like you said, for her to demonstrate these masculine personalities and everything, you would almost think that they would take that into account and be like, okay, well, what if the way her brain works is similar to how a man's brain works right now?
Mhm.
Then why can't she be upheld to that standard then? If
Mhm.
she's not thinking like an ordinary woman, it can't be either she's insane and that's it. It should be she's her brain works differently. But maybe that's the way of them saying insane, because they don't know, how they can't fathom that her brain would work any different. Well, she's got to be insane.
Yeah.
Done.
Yep, that's pretty much how they approached it. They were just like, that's an easy answer. Next.
Yes. And, we had talked about this before, just the idea of them, even they would, like you had mentioned, that they were so focused, not on the murder, but
Mhm.
on their relationship, trying to get to the nitty gritty and understanding their relationship, but they didn't really try to understand. They were more just like, they would question her and be like, you wanted to marry her? And she's like, yeah, I did. And they're like, how is that possible? And she's like, I would have been a man. And then everyone's just like, well, that's not going to work. How are you going to have kids? Well, obviously they're not going to have kids. And she's like, we're not going to have kids. And they're like, well, that's not a life for you too. And it's like, what? But
Very
again,
different, these Southern ideals of the time. Anything that went against that was just incorrect in their mind. So they were like, why would you want to marry someone if you weren't going to have kids? That's the rules. You get married to a man, you have kids, you stay home and raise the kids. That's your lot in life, and that's it.
right. So it just seemed like they didn't even bother. They wanted to question her reasoning, but at the same time, they didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't care to understand her reasoning. They were just more like, she's not following, the protocol. She's not following the traditional values. Clearly, she's off her rocker, and that's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts to that. Crazy. Now, something interesting in this book, at the same time, there was another woman made famous for a completely different way. Ida Wells, an African-American journalist, had wrote a series of groundbreaking, provocative editorials shortly after lynchings had occurred in Memphis. She was rejecting the old threadbare lie that African-American men assaulted white women, which is what led to the lynching. Once word got out of her identity, she fled to Memphis to New York and continued her political activisms. So why do you think the author decided to kind of include these events while this trial was going on? What do you think the importance was of that?
So personally, the way I approached that question is I was thinking that Coe was trying to highlight Memphis's political and social climate, and kind of nest it in the times, just to show like the differences between, or maybe the not so differences between today and back then. She does mention on several occasions that the series of events take place many years before women had the right to vote,
Right?
and it would be more than a century before women could marry one another. And I think it's also worth noting that there was speculation that the judge who was actually presiding over Alice's case was thought to be part of the lynchings that occurred, which really paints him as a true bigot who would fight anything that might disrupt the white Southern values that he and the community believed in. And it makes it kind of seem that Alice was on trial for her forbidden love and not for the murder. Like I said, I mean, there's so much to unpack here, though, and that doesn't even scratch the surface, but that's just kind of my immediate response to that question.
Yeah, I feel like she was also trying to show, because we are in the South, this is, Memphis, Tennessee. I think she was just trying to show how two women who were probably both deemed insane for different ways were treated.
Mm-hmm.
Alice, they thought she was insane, but at the same time, they wanted to coddle her.
Yeah.
Ida, once they figured out she was a woman, well, at first they thought she was a man.
Mm-hmm.
Once they found out who she was, they even said if you ever came back, lynchings would take place.
Yeah.
They both kind of, showed the non-traditional ways for a woman. So Ida's, telling everyone or letting people know that no, these men are not assaulting these white women. She even said the white women are probably wanting it.
Yeah.
And they weren't assaulted. They were in a relationship with them where they wanted to have that experience with them, and then because it's forbidden. So you have these two forbidden things that women are doing, and they're both treated completely differently.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing that they were threatening to kill Wells for just writing something, but then Alice, who actually committed like the ultimate sin of actually murdering someone, they do everything they can to make sure that she doesn't not only end up in jail, she's not ever going to be hung for this, because she's kind of this white high society lady, like
Right.
It really matters. The reputation of the family really matters. So they were like, it's better if people think she's insane rather than to see her hung or end up in jail.
Yes. So that, yes, it's obviously, racial differences and everything. So, it was very unequal. And then also, I mean, not just that, but to Alice, where people saw her kill Freda, to Ida, where, mm, there was no real proof that she wrote it until later, obviously,
Right.
But so the burden of proof, one outright, the other, but this one is, viewed very negatively upon, where this one's like, oh, you poor little bird.
Yep.
So obviously Alice was expert medical doctors and the finest jury, white men, all white men on the jury, by the way, white men, the finest men in Memphis, all declared her insane. She gets transferred to an insane asylum, and they actually interviewed her while she was in the insane asylum, and they reported that she started actually partaking in feminine activities and enjoyed them, such as needlework, embroidery, and reading, things she hated when she was younger. So this was all before she mysteriously died, of course. But what do you think could have changed while she was in the asylum? Or do you believe she was actually just playing a part?
So I think that Alice was just playing a part at that point. She'd lost the love of her life, her freedom, everything. And I think she realized that she was going to have to play the game if she wanted the rest of her life to be easy. I mean, it's also possible that she didn't really have a choice. Maybe the only activities available to her were those feminine coded activities. So it was either you can do needlework or you can sit alone in your room. So it's like, would you rather do nothing or something that you don't particularly enjoy? I feel like she probably at that point didn't feel that she had the power to express herself, or maybe she just didn't want to deal with the consequences such expression would cost her.
Ooh, true. Part of me feels like she had there were a couple times throughout the book she had said she had tried to kill herself. She doesn't care if she was hung by killing Freda and everything. To me, I just feel like she was just kind of biding her time until she could ultimately just go. And I feel like getting into these feminine activities, for her, I feel like she wasn't insane, but I do feel there was parts of her that she might have needed help with. So I feel like, not that she recovered or anything, but I feel like maybe she just stepped outside of her body for a while after the murder of her beloved. She probably thought about that and was just like, okay, I'm just gonna escape to my happy place with Freda in the back of my mind. And so that was just her escaping from reality. And so she's doing things she normally wouldn't do because she's escaping from the real world. And so I think it was a little bit both. She was playing a part, but at the same time, she was not there.
Yeah.
She probably believed that when killing Freda, a part of her is with Freda. And now this other part is just a shell of her former self. So it doesn't matter what she does. She can do all the feminine activities and dance with the men all she wants. It doesn't matter because a part of her is gone.
Absolutely.
That's what I think.
I mean, like, this is such a tragic story, really, for both of them.
Yes.
I mean, it's rough. It was definitely rough to read, and it's just, I'm glad that things are different now, but it also shows like how much is still the same in certain areas of the world.
Yeah, no, that's very true. It was definitely, I mean, that's the idea of true crime. It was very real. But you still got to read it in a way that was, a good narrative of it. And I'm really glad we got to do true crime because that was fun. It was very heavy. It was very deep and very sad. but
But it
fun.
was fun, absolutely.
And you got to read about a part in history that I have never heard of.
Yeah, same here. Like I feel like I learned so much about, the late 1800s America that I didn't know before.
Right. Yeah, you got to see a little glimpse into an area in the 1890s that you probably wouldn't have learned about. So that's what I love about true crime.
Definitely. So
But
cool.
yeah, no, it was great. So, okay, that was our last question. So I think we're going to wrap this up. Justine, thank you. This was an amazing discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so tune in on Monday, August 31st for our story time at 10 a.m. We've been really coming up with some great story times, and they've been really awesome. I have loved watching them. Starting in September, adults, we have some new programs. Look out for next Friday, September 4th. We have a brand new program called APL Made in a Mug. And our Reader's Corner next month will be a little different. We actually will be doing our Reader's Corner at the end of the month on Friday, September 25th. The genre will be dystopian, and we'll be reviewing the book Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wabishig Rice. And so we'll actually be posting discussion questions at the beginning of the month. So you have, while you read the book, you can think about these, and then we can talk about them in our actual discussion. So we got some cool stuff for fall. Justine, thank you again for joining me. Happy Friday, everyone. My name is Nicole. Thanks for joining APL Readers Corner, and we'll see you next time. Bye.